So New Zealand are world champions. They have beaten India by 8 wickets in the inaugural World Test Championship final. They've been the better side in Southampton, and they etched themselves in Test cricket's history for a long time to come. It's an ICC win for New Zealand for the first time since 2000, October 2000, when Kane Williamson was no more than 10 years old, watching Chris Cairns and Stephen Fleming do what they did in Nairobi. Since then, they came close in 2015. Dale Steyn witnessed that. They came closer in 2019 in the 50-over formats. And here they are just 2 years later in 2021 on similar shores, crowned as World Test Champions. We will look back at it all on Intel Presents ESPN Cricket for Matchday, powered by Royal Stag, with Sanjay Manjrekar and Dale Steyn. Dale, deserving winners. You know, a lot of these boys on the New Zealand side, and they are now champions of the world. It's probably fitting that they're two most prolific run getters, two great ambassadors of the game in New Zealand cricket in particular, were there at the end to see them through.
Yeah, I'm very happy for Roscoe. I've known Ross Taylor for a very long time. Him and Kane Williamson. Kane just a fantastic leader of that New Zealand team, and they've been doing some amazing things in the last couple of years. They've made 2 World Cup finals, and they've really been pushing the bar when it comes to the international game. Not just that team that you once thought of that you could come up and play good cricket against and you could beat them. They are now a powerhouse team. They can be very proud, and you know, both these teams actually to make your way to this final. There's some really good cricket teams out there, but New Zealand deserved winners over the course of this match.
Sanjay,
even the most passionate Indian cricket fan and Indian cricket loyalist will be happy for New Zealand. They won't be grudging this win for New Zealand. That's how New Zealand is. I mean, look at Kane Williamson there, Ross Taylor, 2 wonderful gentlemen. And it's a team that just plays cricket quietly. A lot of years they've been carrying this tag of being a team that punches above their weight. Now they're a team that's a heavyweight when you look at some of the players that they've got. And really, when you look at the result, if you were honest to yourself before the start of this match, you had to give New Zealand the edge. New Zealand more the favorites than India because of the kind of factors that were in their favor. And eventually, you would say that the result is as per cricketing logic. And it isn't a shocking loss to India. India was playing against the odds, put up a good fight in the first innings, but just couldn't carry it on in the second.
We'll talk about the nitty-gritties of this game, the takeaways for both sides, but let's just celebrate the moment for New Zealand first up. And there is this general perception in cricket, isn't there, from the fans, from the media, from those that watch and comment on the game, that New Zealand are this wonderful side. Everyone would almost want them to be their adopted second team. If it's not for your home team or country of birth, it's always New Zealand. You're backing New Zealand, full of nice guys. I'd like to keep that on one side and just talk to the two of you about just the quality of cricket that New Zealand produce. They're a cracking team in terms of just skill, Dale. The bowlers that they managed to produce, Kyle Jamieson, they've got Devin Conway, who looks like a proper Test cricket star. And this has been something that we've seen over the years. Now, this is a highly skilled Test team as well, isn't it?
Yeah, extremely highly skilled Test team. You can tell straight away, just in the bowling department, they definitely outbowled India in this game. I think in leading up to this particular Test match, New Zealand have done amazing things with the ball. Another team that also thinks outside of the box. One of the first teams that, when I played for the Proteas, we spoke about, like, they think outside of the box when it comes to game plans. Even in one-day cricket at one stage, they wouldn't even have a third man. Like interesting things like this, really taking the game and trying to change the way that you go about it, with really good players, not players that everybody is on the tip of their tongues, not the Virat Kohlis, not the AB de Villierses of the world or the Glenn Maxwells, but they're very, very skilled players. Kane Williamson is a magnificent player and should be spoken about in every household and in every cricket conversation. Trent Boult, great bowler. Tim Southee proving what a fantastic player he is. This team has just been slowly but surely doing the right things for the last couple of years, and this is by no fluke that they've won this trophy today. So they've set the bar for themselves. They're a very, very good cricket team.
You go back to the many years that New Zealand have been part of the world stage, and they've always been an impressive team. There's a lot of talk now, Sanjay, whether this team is their greatest in Test history. As a man who's, of course, played alongside Martin Crowe and seen the greats, so the Richard Hadleys of New Zealand cricket, and they've always been a strong team. Where do you rank them? Is this the greatest ever New Zealand team that you have observed and witnessed?
You mentioned Richard Hadley, Martin Crowe. These were all-time greats. I know Martin Crowe averages only 45, but Richard Hadley had excellent numbers. But New Zealand was always a team that had two or three, touching sort of greatness. Of course, Richard Hadley was in his own league, but the others were just about international standard and struggled in conditions that didn't suit them. They had their struggles in India, sometimes when they went to Australia. But as I was researching for this particular test match, Raunak, I started looking at individual players in this particular lineup and looked at the records of Tom Latham. Good record at the test level. Conway, great start to his test career. Kane Williamson, a modern day great. Ross Taylor, plenty of experience. He's also somebody has a good record. Henry Nichols averages in the 40s. You've got BJ Watling, who averages in the mid 30s for a keeper. And then you've got people like Kyle Jamieson and that kind of a bowling attack. So when you look at man to man, I think this particular team has more world-class players in one team than perhaps Kiwi teams of the past.
Dale, you've been through a different era of New Zealand cricket. You've played alongside the likes of, or against the likes of Stephen Fleming, Brendan McCullum in his prime. Here we have a team that Sanjay says could very well be, one of the best that they've had. And they certainly did perhaps match up to India player to player as the better side.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say this is probably the best test team that they've ever put out there. And Sanjay's spot on. They've got more than just one great in this team. The tricky part for New Zealand now is to maintain this, because Ross Taylor, obviously, there's talk of him potentially retiring. BJ Watling has announced that this is his last test match. And you can see he was just getting better and better and better as a wicketkeeper batsman as the years went on. So now you've got to start replacing some of these more senior players that are always in the team. Their bowling department looks really, really fine right now. Jamieson is in there. Trent Bolt's still young. Southey's still fairly young. Wagner's still young. So that bowling lineup is going to be there for the next couple of years. It's just replacing one or two of those key senior players if they decide to step away, like Ross Taylor and BJ Watling. But as far as New Zealand goes, I think they'll be happy to say that this is their best test team that they've ever put out there all round.
There are a few players that would make a lot of other sides in the world. Matt Henry can't find a place in this team. Tom Blundell got runs against England. Will Young got runs against England. Mitchell Santner doesn't make this side.
Tom Latham can keep wickets.
Yes, Latham can keep wickets. So there are a lot of good players in this New Zealand setup. It goes beyond just this 11. But perhaps in all these, the greats that we've mentioned, in Williamson and Taylor aside, perhaps it's time to just spend a little time on one of the youngest players in this team, Kyle Jamieson. Perhaps will be named man of the match shortly, player of the match. But Dale, as we look back at perhaps a bowler who's had the biggest impact on this at such a big stage, you'd say that's Jamieson, the standout bowler of this game?
Absolutely. He was the guy who's taken 7 wickets. Look at the economy rate. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal, that, isn't it? And just a step above, you could see a very rare test match where you see somebody like Bumrah go wicketless. And when you match them man for man, Shami stood up a little bit in the first innings and showed what he was capable of with some skill. But I just think underprepared for the Indian bowlers, and hopefully they get better as they play against England in the next coming test matches. But Jamieson, definitely the standout player. Him, Southey, Bolt, obviously have done their homework. They're well prepared. And Jamieson's on a roll right now. He just seems to be getting better and better since he made his debut, went to the IPL, and he's just continued that kind of form. So he's looking strong for the rest of this year and the rest of his test career so far.
So young in his career, Sanjay, and yet this sort of impact, and the wickets he's got have been big ones in both innings.
Yeah, 7 wickets, and again the blue book is out. And I was looking at the players that he's got out in this test match. He's got out Virat Kohli twice. He had the better of Rishabh Pant. He's got Rohit Sharma out. He's got Pujara out. So he's got all the big wickets. And when it mattered, and in the first innings, that was the crucial blow when he got Virat Kohli out. And then, earlier as well, when he troubled the top order batters. So both innings and different surfaces. If there was one bowler who could get the batters out while they were looking to defend and bowl those wicket-taking deliveries more consistently. It was Kyle Jamieson. So a wonderful performance from him, and really somebody that we should keep track of. And especially, Raunak, I was impressed that he came to India and again could hold his own on the kind of pitches that we have in a completely, alien format to him, because he hasn't had much T20 experience. So a guy from New Zealand coming to
Yeah.
India and doing well in the IPL shows that he's a man who can adapt.
If since we're on Jameson, perhaps just a quick comment before we come back to the Test match. I'll steer away from it, Dale. But he had a short stint with the IPL with Virat Kohli, would have bowled a fair bit to him. It surprised us as to how good he was. You worked with us for that first half of the IPL, and Jameson had an instant impact in spite of a big price tag, in spite of not playing as much white ball cricket. Here he is now looking like he's already mastered the red ball game. Do you see him as someone who will go on to have a big impact even in the subcontinent with the red ball, bowling with the SG ball, or even in white ball cricket in other formats? Where do you see Jameson taking off after this sort of start to his Test career?
I think it's always difficult to kind of continue this. He's averaging 12 at the moment. It's he's gonna find some rough. He's gonna find some rough times. I'm telling you, he's gonna find himself in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, where there's not a lot of bounce and where there's not a lot of seam movement, and he's gonna have to find different ways. But that said, he looks like a guy who's ready to adapt. He knows how to adapt and learns how to adapt quickly. He's obviously spent some good time with guys like AB and Virat when he was playing in the IPL, Glenn Maxwell, just listening to them, learning from them when he was bowling to them and figuring it out, what lengths and what lines he should be bowling. So he's a cricketer who's looking to learn. But I think there'll be darker times ahead in terms of pitches. He's been quite lucky with this one in particular. It looked like there was a lot in the air for him, but he was just super. He's had a great start so far. And he has all the capabilities of what's going to make a great fast bowler. He's got height, he's got good skill, and he's got great control. And that's why his economy is where it is right now, at like 1.2, 1.3 in this whole game. So he's going to be absolutely fine if he continues in this vein.
See, Raunak, Test cricket is about Test cricket being played in different conditions, different countries, and the advantage New Zealand had playing this World Test Championship final was that they were playing in England, and they had the skills and maybe the instincts also, which were better than India in England, because India, despite their much improved overseas performance, it's largely improved in Australia. England still poses problems to this improving Indian side. In fact, I just looked at some numbers. South Africa, England, and New Zealand, they played 26 since 2010. They've lost 18 games. So it was a little unfortunate that India turned up to play this final in England. Had it been Australia and South Africa, I think the result would have been different, because that's the kind of side India is. So conditions, has a huge bearing on the eventual result. So coming back to Kyle Jamieson, his bowling style is something that you can imagine will work really well in England. New Zealand, it does already. South Africa, Australia. So most countries, I think he is pretty, well suited to exploit those conditions. As Dale mentioned, coming to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and maybe India would be his challenges. And I'm sure he's a young man who's very smart, and he knows that already.
Yeah, there's a conversation I will have with the two of you on the future of the World Test Championship, the takeaways from the inaugural edition. Before that, let's just wrap up a few things on New Zealand. We'll then go to India and then discuss this. And Kyle Jamieson, all credit to him. But Williamson and Taylor, perhaps now on the scorecard or after the game's done, it looks easy. 8-wicket win. Dale Steyn called a 7-wicket win at tea, and it should have been one. Both batsmen presented opportunities which India did not take. But it's an 8-wicket win, which was a partnership of 96. But it came after a period of play when India were on top for a brief period in that last session. Sanjay, runs were not coming easy. There were about 3 or 4 overs on the trot where New Zealand couldn't get a run. Ross Taylor took forever to almost get going. But the value of experience shown on the biggest stage, Taylor and Williamson making sure they weathered that period to eventually take New Zealand home.
Absolutely. And that's the job of seniors, to take your team through in matches like this, when pressure is high and it's all about holding your nerves. And that's where I think the onus is on the senior players who've had a number of matches. So it was incumbent on them to take New Zealand through, and that's what they did. I mean, when you look at the amount of overs that were played in this test match, 92, 99, 73, 45. So we have to conclude that it wasn't a treacherous pitch by any stretch of imagination for seamers or for bowlers and spin bowlers that would make life difficult. Finally, after seeing the fag end of that play, you can say that I think the occasion got to a lot of batters in this particular match, and they all of them erred on the side of caution. And towards the end, when they started playing short, you could see that this pitch was pretty good.
It's always a worry for a player who's been around for too long that have I overstayed my time. Ross Taylor, 37, is already mentioned in the media that had New Zealand won that 2019 World Cup, maybe he would have considered retiring. But here's a guy who does seem like he's not worried about about whether he's on too long. He still seems to be an important cog, a key cog of this New Zealand side, Dale. And who's to say he won't go on a bit longer?
Yeah, as long as you're scoring runs and you're enjoying what you're doing, then you earn your place in any international team, But when the hunger starts to disappear and you don't feel it anymore, then you start to question: am I taking somebody's place? Am I worthy of actually being here? And with Roscoe, it doesn't look like it. It looks like he still has a lot of hunger. He's still willing to take the blows. You can see he got a nasty ball from Bumrah, bang on the head. And he could have thought to himself, we need 20 runs. I'll just slog it out here. And if I get out, somebody else can come out and do it. But he didn't. He carried on. He wanted to see his team through. And who knows what he wants to do from here on out, Age is just a number these days. It all boils down to fitness and whether you actually have the skill to do what you love doing. And Roscoe clearly has both of those.
For a guy who's been around 14 years, Sanjay, does he also, we had the similar sort of chat on Pujara on whether you're noticing different, any differences in his game. But for a guy who's been around 14 years, does he strike you as someone who's pretty much been the same batter for the large part of his career, and therefore successful?
You keep watching cricket and you get certain revelations and certain sort of, confirmations of things that you're always talking about. And Dale, I was talking to Raunak, when Ross Taylor played one of his typical cut shots. And I said, I guess guys who have long-term successful, test careers are guys who don't change too much. Their strengths remain the same in the first 10 test matches and even in their last 10. And guys who forfeit their strengths to, maybe cover up for some other weakness are the guys who struggle. You mentioned this morning about Pujara not playing the punch shot or the flick of the wrist. And I've seen all players who had long, exceptional careers, their strengths remain their strengths, and those same kind of shots are still there in their armory. So I think that is an indication, very hard to achieve, but it's brilliant for guys who have not changed their game from test match number 1 to test match number 80 or 100. And Ross Taylor is one of those guys who doesn't seem to have changed at all.
Okay, one more New Zealander that I'd like to mention before we move to India has been Team Saudi. Mike Jameson may very well take on the man of the match effort, but Saudi's role can't be undermined in what's been setting up almost leading the bowling attack in many ways, Dale. And he's been the kind of bowler that's managed to be effective on all days, whatever the overhead conditions, whatever the situation. Saudi's made the ball do something almost every time he's bowled.
Yeah, he's been great. I think he averages close to something like 20, for a fast bowler. That's amazing. That's exactly what you want to be averaging. And he's kind of just led this bowling lineup. Him, Trent Boult, Neil Wagner, Kyle's slipped in there beautifully, perfectly, exactly what they need. He's the kind of impetus that they needed in this bowling lineup. But Sim Saudi there, he's just been a revelation. I think since probably the 2015 World Cup, I've seen him swing the ball with more control than he had in his first couple of years playing for New Zealand. That World Cup with the white ball, he was insane. There was one particular game against England. I think he got close to 7 wickets. And it's small games like that. Yeah, it's just small games like that you just get this confidence within yourself, and you know that you're capable of this ability, and all of a sudden you become Superman with the ball, and it just takes off from there. And since then, he just seems to have upped his skill, his use of the crease. He's just been great, and he was with RCB 2 years ago when I was at the IPL, and even then I could see he was still always wanting to learn on his game. So I'm very happy for Tim. This is well deserved. He's one of those players that's always been there. He's a good batter, puts in good contributions with the bat. He's one of the rare bowlers that you find in the slips. He's an all-round fantastic cricket player.
Yep, absolutely. It also then perhaps gives New Zealand full credit and vindication of team selection, Sanjay, as we now move to India as well. New Zealand had a call to make. Do they play a left-arm spinner? Do they play all 4 seamers? And it looks like they did get their team right, at least certainly a little more right than India's.
And, it's easy in hindsight after seeing the result to be critical of certain aspects of selection. But I think we are on record here on this particular show where we said that the team selection of New Zealand made a lot of sense. They had the option of playing a left-arm spinner, but they went for a Colin the Grand Home because they felt in these kind of conditions they could make use of him. And again, like Dale mentioned, they have different tactics. So they had Colin the Grand Home bowling a lot of overs, if you remember, on day 1 when the game started. Whether it was day 2, it doesn't matter. When the game started, he bowled a lot of overs, as many as Kyle Jamieson. And the second innings wasn't called upon to bowl at all. It was really horses for courses. And it's a good thing they didn't play the left-arm spinner because Rishabh Pant batting on 30-odd and had Jas Patel been there, who knows what would have happened. Maybe he wouldn't have been given the ball, but they got their team selection spot on.
All right. Let's talk about India and the takeaways for them. Sanjay, this could be, I don't want to be too critical of India because they've actually played well. Their batters did grind for periods of time. Bowlers made it hard for New Zealand first innings. It just looks like they found themselves in front of a superior team. But what are the takeaways for you? Both positive and negative for India. Let's start with bat, perhaps.
A brilliant start to the test match in the way Shubman Gill and Rohit Sharma batted. Considering a team that hasn't played any test matches, they were playing IPL before that. No warm-up games in England. It was cold conditions, lost the toss, asked to bat first, put on 62 runs. And that was impressive, that opening stand. Unfortunately, Rohit Sharma couldn't carry on much, but I think that's one positive. He looks like a test opener, even in English conditions. Now he just has to work on making sure that he converts his 30s into big scores. So India did really well. And because of the kind of quality they have in their seam lineup, they were also able to bounce back, not getting too many in the first inning, 217. They were still in the game. I think India, lost the game when in better batting conditions, just got 170 in the second innings. And you had New Zealand more or less in the same batting conditions, 140 for 2.
It looks like, it's all easy in hindsight, but had they batted, for another 50, 60 runs, given New Zealand something in excess of 160, 170 to chase, you never know what that could have yielded. But Dale, as we look back at takeaways for India from this, their bowlers in particular, we've had Bumrah go wicketless. He did come close, chance going down today, but otherwise it's been a Bumrah that's perhaps, it's fair to say, had the least impact from all the bowlers in this test match. What are your takeaways for India's bowlers from what you've seen?
I thought they bowled nicely. They made it difficult for New Zealand to score runs. And as the game went on, especially into day 6, when it was probably the best time to bat, the sun was out the whole day. It was probably more difficult to get wickets than it would have been the previous days. But they're definitely going to have to spend some time with the ball in their hands. I think they were probably just a little underprepared when you compare them to the New Zealanders who had already played 2 test matches and had spent some time in England already with the Duke's ball. So they're bowlers, and I'm worried about Ishant because I saw he went off there now with a blow on his finger. You don't want the bowlers to start going down now with 5 tests coming up. But they're just going to have to upskill themselves a little bit because in this test match in particular, they were outskilled. There was a little bit of a lack of skill in terms of swing. Bumrah might need to learn how to just use their crease a little bit. I don't want to tell them what to do. I'm just saying what I saw. And when I compare them to the New Zealand seamers, they looked below what the New Zealand seamers were doing, and it was very visible in terms of swing and what was happening off the deck. So whatever it is that they're doing in their preps after this, they're going to have to focus heavily on that.
How
Raunak,
big a factor was
selection? Sorry, I thought you had taken a pause for me too.
No, I thought you were going to come in, so I paused. But yeah, carry on, Sanjay.
Yeah. So I thought you had given me that pause for me to get in, and that's how I got in. So do you want to ask the question or?
No, no, please, please, carry on. I want you to weigh in on the bowlers, then I'll ask my
Yeah,
next question.
yeah. Uh, if you have to look at how India went about before the game started, two spinners was a debatable selection. We talked about it before the game as well, especially when the conditions were overcast and the toss was delayed by a day. And you saw what happened, when they picked one player for his batting, which was Jadeja. And, his left arm spin wasn't the reason that he was picked. He was picked for his batting. And that is something that I'm always against. You've got to have specialist uh, players in your team, and if they felt that the pitch was going to be dry and turning and wanted two spinners and picked Jadeja for his left arm spin along with Ashwin, then it would have made sense. But they picked him for his batting, and I think that backfired, as mostly it does.
Yeah.
Had they had a specialist batter like Hanuma Vihari, for example, who has a pretty good defense, would have been handy. Maybe 170 would have been 225, 30, who knows. But I just hope India don't do what England has historically done. Pick somebody because there's another strength that they have, and that strength might just come to good use, but very rarely it does when it's a pressure game.
All right. Now, with 5 tests against England, I'd like to see if India continue this trend of announcing their teams on the eve of it. But how big a factor was the fact that New Zealand played 2 tests going into this in England? Yes, they are more suited to these conditions than India, you'd think, Sanjay. But India didn't have any pre-game, warm-up game. Imagine if this final would have happened, say, after the 4 or 5 tests against England. Would that have seen, a striking difference in this Indian side?
Yeah, I think we'd have seen maybe a striking difference in the way the bowlers would have bowled. Batting issues, we'll come to know as the England series goes on, because there are some serious technical issues that India will have to address. I think bowling issues are easier to address. They had a bit of a reality check in New Zealand when they went with the same kind of combination, 3 seam bowlers, and didn't have a single swing bowler. And New Zealand beat them 2-0 in the 2 test matches because they just swung the ball again, like they've done here. And once again, India went with 3 seam bowlers who generally are around short of good length. First test match against England, I have no doubt that they'll be looking at somebody like a Mohammad Siraj just to offer something different, a bit like a Jimmy Anderson kind of outswing bowler. And that change will come. And the bowlers, Bumrah, you expect him to keep improving as the matches goes on. But batters, there's a lot of hard work for them, going forward because of the techniques that I see that they have committed themselves to.
And as we think of perhaps potential takeaways from the World Test Championship itself, is that one thing that you'd like to take away, Dale? That New Zealand series in England was, of course, always planned. It's not like it popped up after they made the World Test Championship final. It can perhaps give them some kind of advantage to just get used to conditions, etc. Is that something the organizers can take note of, or is there anything that can be done to perhaps keep things on more, level footing? If we have a World Test Championship final, what's the future for this for you?
Yeah, it's really rough, because you need to find time, I suppose. You want you want players to go over there and have an opportunity to prep. New Zealand were lucky that they got over and they played a series against England. India not so fortunate to have that kind of prep. COVID has messed with a lot of this too. 2 test matches may have given an opportunity. 2 or 3 test matches where you make it a series may prove, because this, if we had to go into another test match, would be very interesting. I think India would have learned their lessons. You may see Siraj come in. They may not play 2 spinners. They may get a different pitch where it's more dry. I don't know. So it would have been a great series. But a one-off game for the first way to handle it, with their hands kind of tied, the ICC and whoever made these decisions, it was fine. It worked out okay. The reserve day was important, because if this day wasn't there, we wouldn't have had a test match. So some good decisions made, and some things that they can think about going forward.
You'd go with that, Sanjay? A good start to a good concept, which perhaps can be worked on going forward?
Let's be honest and fair to the ICC as well, because they know what is an ideal test championship to have, where everybody gets a fair crack, and there's fairness all around. Everybody gets the same number of matches, and there are plenty of warm-up games before a big final, and then you have a 3-match series, if not a 2-match series. But it's tough to fit all that in. So, I applaud them and I like the effort that they're trying to make something happen with Test cricket, which is a format that struggles to connect with the modern audience. And if you're playing just random Test matches, you're not doing it any, good. So at least there is a culmination of all the Test matches that were played. And this particular game had got a lot of attention, which is great. And you saw celebrations. You saw the Kiwi players in the dressing room. That is something that you live to watch sport. And if any match is going to provide something like this at the end of it, then boy, you've got to make sure you have it. So whether it's ideal or not, I think it's something that I'll give a thumbs up to. One match series, no problem. Rather have a World Test Championship with a final rather than not having anything at all.
All right. Well, we have a detailed discussion that will come up in the next few days on ESPN Cricket for Run Order, where we've discussed what we'd like to see in the World Test Championship going forward. Both Dale and Sanjay are part of that, so do watch out for that. Now, Dale, you know a lot of these current players, these New Zealand boys. Where do they rank on the celebration index? I don't know if you were around after the game in Auckland. I'm sorry to bring up those memories in 2015, that heartbreaking semi-final for you guys. I don't know if you were looking to see what the New Zealand boys were doing that night, but how do they celebrate? Are they the big are they big on that, or are they again the gentle, humble, very polite lot?
I think they'll be fine. They'll enjoy themselves. They'll be in there playing table tennis and they'll have the music playing in the background. Unfortunately, these days, with COVID, you can't exactly go out and go out on the town, I suppose. But they'll enjoy each other's companies. A lot of them will be on their phones. Like with FaceTime to their family, want to share those moments. If their family is there, they'll just all be together. This is a long journey for these teams, both India and New Zealand, to get into this final, and they'll just want to appreciate their time and all that work that they've put in together to get into this position and win. So they'll probably be in their team room at the hotel, order lots of foods, a couple drinks, I suppose, table tennis, PlayStation, and all that kind of stuff. They'll have a good time tonight.
India have a few weeks off, Sanjay, and we're hearing that the board's already told them they can, spend some time with their families. There are parts of the UK that you can go out to before everyone regroups again for the first test. Perhaps sometime that'll do them good.
Absolutely. And, it's a team that is in demand and has to travel all over the world and now live in bubbles. So it's not easy. And any time off cricket, and if it's part of the official itinerary, I think it's great. So England is a nice place, and Indians just love countries where they can just walk about, be out there in the open. So let's hope they get a lot of fresh air, unwind before they get back to what's going to be 5 Test match series is another massive one for India. So they've got enough time, I guess, to recharge their batteries.
Yeah, I think Sanjay, you're planning some fresh air and some time out and away from the city as well next few days.
Yes, Raunak, and I'm hoping that some of you guys might join me if when
Thank you. Wonderful. We look forward to it. I know that Dale Steyn has a celebration coming up. 38 years young on Sunday, so the party will be big enough, I think, Dale. So happy birthday in advance, and I must say on behalf of everyone at ESPN Cricket for Match Day, Sanjay, what a pleasure it's been working with Dale in the format. Well, he's been brilliant in every format, but in the format that he perhaps most entertained all of us watching over the years. Dale, have you enjoyed it?
I've loved it. Thanks for having me. I do speak a lot, so I hope I haven't bored anybody with some of the stuff that I say, but it's been lots of fun. If you're not playing the game and the game that you love, it's always good to talk about it. It's good to refresh the memories and talk about that stuff. I think a lot of people want to know some of the things that have happened behind closed doors, and I'm never too shy to share that information. So thanks for having me.
Oh, brilliant, man. And look at who you're talking
Dale, I can
to.
just say one thing, that people are very keen to
please
listen to anyone who talks from his heart, and that is something that I've found in all my chats with you, the interviews that we have done on the ball, that you speak from your heart, you're very honest, and I just hope you keep that quality, because that's what fans want, what you really think. Otherwise, there's something that you say on air and off air, you got a slightly different view. So it is almost like fresh air to get some nice honest thoughts.
All
Thank
right,
you.
this has been brilliant. We can promise you it's not going to be the last you hear from Dale Steyn or Sanjay Manjrekar on the ESPN Cricket 4 network. I hope you've enjoyed our coverage right through this World Test Championship final. Seems like it's been going on for a long time. Thank God we've got a result,
Oh,
but it's only been a
yes.
week now. In 15 minutes, it'll be
Yeah.
Thursday in India. It'll be midnight. This game was supposed to start last Thursday. So it's been a game we'll remember, and deserving winners were Kane Williamson's New Zealand after all of it. Big thank you to Sanjay Manjrekar as well as Dale Steyn for their time and their thoughts. And big thank you to all of you for joining us on Intel Presents ESPN Cricket for Match Day, powered by Royal Stag. We've got plenty of cricket coming up. 5 tests between England and India. There's a limited overs series between Sri Lanka and India as well before that. So be rest assured that we'll have you covered. And we look forward to getting Dale back when the IPL resumes after all the cricket that I just mentioned. So look out for On the Ball, like Sanjay Manjrekar points out, some wonderful cricket chat and conversation between Dale and Sanjay. There's an ESPN Cricket for Run Order that's coming up on the network too. And of course, we look forward to your company the next time we do go live on ESPN Cricket for Match Day. What a wonderful day for New Zealand cricket, something that all of us can enjoy and well, certainly relinquish for the next few days. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.